We are of Wodonga. Thank you for supporting us. We wrote those 2 songs to perform for you and show our thanks to Wodonga. Thank you.
Karibu mama na karibu nyumbani.
Karibu mama na karibu nyumbani. Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote ni ndugu. Tunahitaji amani na ujirani mwema. Tukizidi kushikamana Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote tutasonga mbele. Tukizidi kushikamana Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote tutasonga mbele.
Karibu mama na karibu nyumbani.
Karibu mama na karibu nyumbani. Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote ni ndugu. Tunahitaji amani na ujirani mwema. Tukizidi kushikamana Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote tutasonga mbele. Tukizidi kushikamana Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote tutasonga mbele.
Ujirani kitu bora,
matatizo kusaidiana pasipo kutengana.
Ujirani kitu bora,
matatizo kusaidiana pasipo kutengana. Wananchi wa Hovell wakija Wodonga wapokelewe vema. Wananchi wa Wodonga wakija Hovell wapokelewe vema.
Ujirani kitu bora,
matatizo kusaidiana pasipo kutengana. Ujirani kitu bora, matatizo kusaidiana pasipo kutengana. Wananchi wa Hovell wakija Wodonga wapokelewe vema. Wananchi wa Wodonga wakija Hovell wapokelewe vema.
Karibu mama na
Karibu nyumbani. Karibu mama na karibu nyumbani. Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote ni ndugu. Tunahitaji amani na ujirani mwema. Tukizidi kushikamana Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote tutasonga mbele. Tukizidi kushikamana Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote tutasonga mbele.
tunamshukuru Mungu
Tunamshukuru Mungu. Nchi yetu ya Afrika kukubaliwa kuingia katika nchi ya Australia Community. Kwa juhudi zenu, kwa busara zenu, kwa upendo wenu,
tunamshukuru Mungu
tunamshukuru Mungu. Nchi yetu ya Afrika kukubaliwa kuingia katika nchi ya Australia Community. Kwa juhudi zenu, kwa busara zenu, kwa upendo wenu. Karibu mama na karibu nyumbani. Karibu mama na karibu nyumbani. Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote ni ndugu. Tunahitaji amani na ujirani mwema. Tukizidi kushikamana Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote tutasonga mbele. Tukizidi kushikamana Hovell na Wodonga, sisi sote tutasonga mbele. kwanze na wasimoni wake.
Mungu Baba akulinde.
Mungu Baba akulinde, akupe maisha mama naye na wasimoni wako.
Mungu Baba akulinde.
Mungu Baba akulinde, akupe maisha mama naye na wasimoni wako. Gavumenti tashukuru kwa kutupa huduma. Gavumenti yae na wasimoni wenu. Gavumenti tashukuru kwa kutupa huduma. Gavumenti yae na wasimoni wenu.
Mungu Baba awalinde.
Mungu Baba awalinde, awape maisha. Gavumenti yae na wasimoni wenu.
Mungu Baba awalinde.
Mungu Baba awalinde, awape maisha. Gavumenti yae na wasimoni wenu.
Ogetiwe twashukuru.
Getiwe twashukuru kwa kutupa huduma. Getiwe yae na wasimoni wenu.
Ogetiwe twashukuru.
Getiwe twashukuru kwa kutupa huduma. Getiwe yae na wasimoni wenu.
Mungu Baba awalinde.
Mungu Baba awalinde, awape maisha. Getiwe yae na wasimoni wenu.
Mungu Baba awalinde.
Mungu Baba awalinde, awape maisha. Getiwe yae na wasimoni wenu. Wodonga tashukuru kwa kutupa huduma. Wodonga na wasimoni wenu. Wodonga tashukuru kwa kutupa huduma. Wodonga na wasimoni wenu.
Mungu Baba awalinde.
Mungu Baba awalinde, awape maisha. Wodonga na wasimoni wenu.
Mungu Baba awalinde.
Mungu Baba awalinde, awape maisha. Wodonga na wasimoni wenu. Sitikaso tashukuru kwa kutupa huduma. Sitikaso na wasimoni wenu. Sitikaso tashukuru kwa kutupa huduma. Sitikaso na wasimoni wenu.
Mungu Baba awalinde.
Mungu Baba awalinde, awape maisha. Sitikaso na wasimoni wenu.
Mungu Baba awalinde.
Mungu Baba awalinde, awape maisha. Sitikaso
just tuned in to our council meeting, what a very special way to open our last meeting of the year. Can I thank our Congolese newest Wodonga citizens? So you are people of Wodonga now, and we would like to thank you for your music, for your compassion, and for coming to live in our cities. So welcome, and please thank you so much for all of you. But if you have to go, that's okay. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. See you soon. See you soon.
So, welcome to the gallery. Welcome, councillors and executive. So if I could first begin with a statement of acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional owners of this land in which we are meeting and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and to those from other communities who are with us here today. For they hold the memories, the tradition and the culture of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 3 on our, it's very hard to stay very focused on this now after all of that liveliness. Item 3 is apologies and requests for leave of absence. Is there any? Not that I know of, even though we'll all be getting a much deserved break over Christmas. Item 4 is declarations under Act, regulations, codes and local laws.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With the agreement of Council, it's proposed to introduce a late item of urgent confidential business in relation to the proposed sale of land at Logic. Therefore, I ask the Mayor and Councillors to consider the following recommendation: that an item of urgent confidential business, proposed sale of land at Logic, be included in the agenda as item 17.2, with the consequential inclusion in the agenda of the confirmation of the confidential minutes as item 17.1. Thank you.
So, councillors, that recommendation is there on your loose piece of paper. Can I have someone move that recommendation to accept that urgent piece of business? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Does anybody wish to speak against it? Otherwise, I will put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Councillors, there is also one more item, which is a change to order of business. And it's under clause 21.2 of the meeting procedure local law, which permits council to change the order of business by resolution. The recommendation is that we move item 8.9, which is the building and works for the construction of the library and art gallery in the activity centre zone and a reduction of 13 car parking spaces at 126 Hovell Street, Wodonga, to actually become 8.4. So it follows immediately after 8.3, and then all subsequent items will remain the same, but we're bringing 8.9 forward. It needs to sit before 8.4. Councillors, that recommendation is there again on that piece of paper. Do I have someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Again, does anybody wish to speak against moving that item? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 5 is declarations by councillors of any conflict of interest. Are there any this evening? I don't think there is. Item 6 is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. They are there on the bottom of page 3. Can I have someone move those, please? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thanks, Councillor Watson. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Bennett? Councillor Watson, any other councillors? No, councillors, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 2 there over the page, on page 4, is the recommendations from the special meeting held on Monday the 25th of November. Can I have someone move that recommendation? So it's on page 4 at the top. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Watson. Again, does anybody wish to speak against it? No? Councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Now, we move to item 8.1, which is section 223, submission on proposal to sell land known as the CBD West. It's all right, I'll let you put it on in 1 second. I'm actually going to ask the CEO to speak, given we had a late email and some further advice from our solicitors. So, CEO, I will hand over to you. Hang on, let me turn that off.
Thank you. I need some help with my technology. Thank you, Mayor. In relation to item 8.1, which is in the topic of which is section 223, submission on the proposal to sell land known as CBD West, I'd firstly like to point out that there is an error on page 11 of the report with respect to the amount listed for the Rescom offer for 26 Stanley Street. The amount is listed as $1,810,000, but it should actually read $1,830,000. The correct amount is included on pages 7 and 8 of the attachments for this meeting, and also formed part of the table papers for the special meeting on the 25th of November. This error in the agenda will be corrected in the minutes. Other than the correction to page 11, the remainder of the officer's report stands as written, but I do note that Brad Matthews from Rescom has emailed councillors earlier on today in relation to a response to the officer's in terms of a response to the officer's report. So I just want to confirm that the matter before council tonight is whether it intends to proceed with the sale to Criterion Property Group, and in doing so it must give consideration to all submissions that were received in response to the public notice. But I would point out that council has developed a legally agreed heads of agreement between ourselves and Criterion Property. We believe this provides a degree of legal certainty that a letter of offer from Rescom does not. But the rest of the paper is as tabled. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Council. Oh, actually, there we go. Okay, councillors, the recommendation is from the officers is on page 16. It's quite a lengthy recommendation. Thank you, CEO, for your further explanation. Do I have someone move that recommendation from the officers? Thank you, Councillor Watson. So, seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson, any comments?
No, Madam Mayor, it's pretty self-explanatory in the report. Thank you.
No, as Councillor Watson said, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think the options we can see on page 13 in terms of the good financial outcome and the certainty that the heads of agreement provides. I thought the presentation by Rescom was really good, and it'll be great to work with them in the future around other possibilities.
I think it's just important to note it was a good submission by Rescom, but the key that we had when we took up this offer for sale and did the heads of agreement was just similar to Rescom's offer from Criterion, that the speed to market and get something happening on this site was important to councillors and council, and the diversity of what will go on the site. So about putting critical mass in the one spot, and both submissions, well, the submission and what Criterion putting down on the table look to meet both those as far as speed and critical mass and diversity of the site as well. So could have went either way.
Councillors, if you just allow me, I'd just like to say we're very fortunate to have more than one set of parties extremely, not even just extremely interested, absolutely committed to investing in our city, and I would like to thank both of them. I would also like to also thank the staff for the adherence and the appropriateness of the process as we went through this. It can get a little tricky in and around some of this stuff, so thank you, CEO, to you and your team. And Councillor Bennett, should this motion get up, whomever is the losing bidder, I'm sure that their interest will not diminish in our city, particularly with everything that's going on and the excitement that is we're seeing occurring right across the city. So, Councillor Watson, did you have anything at all to close? Thank you. Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.2, Gifts, Benefits and Hospitality Policy. Councillors, the motion is there on page 19 with the attachments that you also had separate to be adopted. Do I have someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Yep, Councillor Bennett, any comments?
Yeah, look, our current policy does work really well. So this is just adding a few little things in which you'll see on page 17. There's a couple of dot points there. You'd think this was pretty common sense, but then you do see some bizarre things happening at levels of government, even some interesting things happening at, I think it's City of Casey, and some councillors and some gifts from developers. So I think something that I've really learned in this role is that you can't have any grey areas. So it's great to have something like this in place so we know, so the community know exactly what's going on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. These policies need to be constantly updated. As Councillor Bennett has said, a number of things are constantly in the media concerning wayward councils, and if it's at the forefront here, I think we're very much aware of what needs to be done and how to do it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, it is a review of our report and of the policy, but it just keeps us all in tune and very transparent of what occurs, and when we as councillors attend different events and things like that and maybe given gifts and things like that, that we declare them and they're all open and honest to the council.
Councillor Bennett, did you want anything to close?
In the attachments, it gives all these examples of how to actually enact the policy, and it had an example of what to do if you're offered a holiday by someone. I think that's all pretty clear. I think the best gift that I've ever received in this role was homemade lemonade by the students at Wodonga West.
Thank you. Councillors, the motion is there before us on page 19. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.3, donation and sponsorship requests. Councillors, on page 24 is a recommendation, but I do need a motion. If I could, thank you, Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, if you can allow me to read this out. This was circulated to all councillors this afternoon through Simone, that the application from the Board of Trust for a donation of $3,000 towards a 2020 city-to-city run/walk be approved. Thanks, Madam Mayor, for the opportunity. The funds raised for this goes to our hospitals and cross-border, and many other different charities also help raise funds for this run, a walk, whatever. It's a real connector to our two cities. It ends up in our city each year, and this year it'll again be at Junction Place or Square, and it is really to increase the awareness of our hospitals and what we need to fund these hospitals and the benefit for our health and outcomes for our people.
So going through this meets all of our criteria. We've got criteria on page 20, those 4 dot points there. In addition to this, there was also some discussion because these grants can't be used directly to Albury Wodonga Health, but the Board of Trust are applying for this grant. That's why it's able to meet all of our criteria. Certainly in terms of what they are going to use the sponsorship for if they get it tonight, the $3,000 would be through a water station, like a hydration station at Assumption Gardens. So that will mean that helps our mandate around reducing waste and our policy direction around encouraging healthy lifestyles, more water consumption, and the other one was certainly in various documents that we have, we talk about our advocacy in terms of mental health. So all the funds raised to this will go to Nolan House, which is obviously a really deserving organisation in our community, and mental health is a huge issue. I'm sure everyone around the table would agree to that. The only other thing I just wanted to note for the minutes is on page 20, we've just got a little typo here. We've got about halfway through, it says Wodonga Rotary Club. So we just need to change that to Board of Trust for the minutes. And that's all from me.
Councillors, any other comments? Councillor Hall, then I'll go to Councillor Mildred.
Okay. In the past, we have supported in-kind requests to this event, to which I'd be more supportive of. Albury City is providing support in kind for this event only. I feel this event could be self-supporting and probably should be, and I'm not going to support the request for $3,000 tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The City to City Run and Walk is an absolutely terrific event for our city. It's something that we should encourage and do a lot of things for. However, transferring funds, albeit indirectly, to a state agency is not something that I think we should be doing with ratepayers' money. The thing that we can't forget is that what we're dealing with here is ratepayers' money, and we're donating it. If the ratepayers choose to donate it, then I think that's perfectly fine, but I don't know that it's our position to be donating ratepayers' money that's been provided to us to provide direct services, particularly in the circumstances where the funds are most likely being transferred to a state government agency, being a hospital or Nolan House or the like. So for those reasons, I'm not going to support. I certainly would support if it was an in-kind thing with the normal operational matters that the council might do for an event like this, but to donate actual cash, I can't support it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I kind of will echo Councillor Bennett and Councillor Watson's words, and I'll be supporting this motion tonight, especially down the two cities, one community line as well. Albury City giving in-kind donation by allowing a free gathering place on QE2 Square and also shutting off the roads. And if anyone's aware on how much it actually costs to shut off a road, then whilst they call it in-kind on that side of the border, I'm sure there's a monetary value to that. Part of the donation sponsorship request criteria is what benefit to our community, and also in that is economic benefit. And there's not too many events where we plant 10,000 people in the middle of Wodonga, finishing in Junction Square. So at very least, it's a good economic win for the city in that regards, but more so to the other points that Councillor Bennett and Watson made. So I'll very much be supporting this. One way to know the success of this event too is most fun runs and that throughout Australia are actually declining in numbers, and this is one of the very few that's actually increasing in numbers. So it just goes to show how much our community will get behind this. Thank you.
Councillors, if you just indulge me, I've actually just got a couple of questions I would like Officer Hogg to clarify for me, because we've had discussions, I think it was last year, around the in-kind, and I know that there was a fair bit of work done around process for that by the staff, and we talked and discussed at length about in-kind versus cash and why we actually went down that track. Is that okay through you, CEO, to Officer Hogg to do that explanation for me?
Sorry. When it comes to supporting events across the city, we do provide advice and advocacy, as we do for every event that comes through our door, and we welcome it. In regards to in-kind, it's not something we do tend to provide. What we do generally is have a commercial rate of hire, or otherwise some of our sites are free and some of them have a community rate as well. So, and then we do encourage those organisers to seek support alternatively, either through community impact grants, event attraction grants, or through sponsorship and donations.
So councillors, in effect for me, while we give the $3,000, we actually get it straight back in a higher fee. So it's almost a book entry transaction. And I know that we've done this because it keeps the process really clean in terms of application. So it means that that rigour around who's eligible, how they go about applying is absolutely put in place. And for me, that actually provides a whole lot more transparency because it comes up to us. It actually just doesn't happen in the organisation. It actually comes up for public comment via us, and it actually comes up to us for adoption. So in that effect, it's, well, we give it out, we actually technically don't because it's really just that book entry. The other component, and it was Councillor Lowe, the economic driver or the economic investment in and around this event is huge. You're right, there's 10,000 people. And while we don't necessarily support community events just for that, I think we need to recognise it because the return for our businesses who are in the CBD is substantial. And I don't think we should lose sight of that because while we are gifting something, we're actually receiving something a whole lot more. In addition to that, and I know that there's quite a few councillors, Councillor Lowe, Bennett and Watson and myself, who get out every year and do this walk or run. I'm only walking. You know, the community spirit that it engenders and the community connectedness is absolutely amazing. I don't think I can remember another event other than the opening of the freeway where we saw that kind of engendered combined community, and to have that happen every year is just fantastic. I'm going to give back to Councillor Watson to close.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just remind everyone in the audience, this started in 2016 and volunteers started then and volunteers still run it today. So there's no large group that are gaining any profit out of this. It all goes back to our strong community. Some 420,000 has been raised over these 4 years, and some 16,600 participants have run, walked or crawled their way around our city, and it's just a great partnership between our joint hospitals, our joint communities, and probably embarrassing the state government a little bit on both sides that we're raising funds for our hospital.
Thank you, councillors, for your comments. All those in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Certainly. I will ask, can you please read out that motion again for me, Councillor? Turn your mic on for me.
Madam Mayor, the motion is that the application from the Board of Trust for a donation of $3,000 towards the 2020 City to City Run/Walk be approved.
Thank you. Councillors, all those in favour? Councillor Mitchell, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Speedy, Councillor Lowe, Councillor Watson. Against? Councillor Mildren and Councillor Hall. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we are now at the point where we are moving 8.9 forward. So in front of 8.4, councillors, the recommendation, which is a lengthy one, begins on page 70. The report precedes that. So it goes for a couple of pages until page 75. So from page 70 to 75 is the suggested recommendation from officers. Councillors, do I have someone move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Watson. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, it is a very lengthy recommendation. I'm not going to read any part of it tonight because I'm a slow reader and I might muck it up, but very, very happy to put this forward.
The bit that I'll touch on in this very lengthy report is just the car parking demand assessment that was done, because part of this is a waiver of car parking. So the details are on page 65. And there was, the survey was done on a Friday and a Saturday to see how much of the parking around that precinct was utilised, and you can see all the results here. So on a Friday, it was at its peak, let me just get this right, at 2 p.m, and that's 93, so that's quite a lot. And then the peak on Saturday was at 2 p.m, and that was 21%. In this assessment, it also highlights that that the subject land is well serviced by public transport. And while I agree with that, and that it is, you know, the hub down there. I still think there is so many improvements in our public transport. So yes, I agree with that, but there's still a lot of issues within our public transport set up locally. Also, that many streets close to the subject land include bicycle lanes. Again, great, and I'm not a pro cyclist like our CEO, but I dread going through that roundabout on a bike. Like, I just, you know, pray and go through. So yes, there are bike lanes surrounding it, but it's near that huge big roundabout that I probably wouldn't be cruising through. And there's a high likelihood that some visitors will be undertaking other tasks. They're not going just for the library, they're coming down here to go to the post office, to go down the shop. So there's other places to park as well. So the assessment takes all of that into consideration. The other part is, if this waiver goes through, the funds will be used for public parking projects, and they're listed on page 67. So pedestrian amenities, bicycle facilities, bicycle parking, end of trip facilities. It would be awesome to have some end of trip facilities locally. I know we've talked about that quite a few times. I was at the library last week at about 3:30 and there were 6 scooters, like the ones kids ride, you know, non-motorised ones, out the front, which I've probably never seen before. So we've got to make sure that we have those facilities that actually encourage our community to use active transport to this community asset.
Probably just echo Councillor Bennett's words, and also just pick up on a little bit in that survey that when that at 2 p.m. on the Friday, when that car parking was at 93%, less than 100 metres away was another 100 odd car parks that was only at 22%. So neither in the peak time, there was still well over 80 spare car parks, and if anyone likes to take the time, they can go back and look over our CBD parking strategy too, which is quite low. It shows maximum across the city, which is about 83% at the very peak time. So, and from memory, an ideal level is actually between 85 and 95% is where your parking should be at any one time. Otherwise, you tend to have what they call an oversupply. But and the end of trip facilities, for those who don't know what they are, can be anything from scooter hangers, but also we're big on encouraging bike riding within our city, and as our mode of transport, not only for health but for other reasons. And we need somewhere to park our bikes and have a shower and grab a drink of water, etc. So it'd be good to see some of that around there as well.
Councillors, for me, it feels a little bit strange asking ourselves permission to waive car parks, but I thank the CEO and his team because I don't think we could ever be accused of not being open and transparent and playing with a very fair hand and applying the same principles that anybody else would have to endure, as we should have to endure those ourselves, making sure that we apply those good planning principles around provision of not only parking but other alternatives. I think one of the other things that's exciting is, well, I believe we'll get a lot of visitors to our new gallery art space and our new library because it is going to be absolutely a fantastic facility. But I'm also expecting a change in behaviour in terms of modes of transport to come into our city. And I think that continued investment in the forward planning and thinking around bike access, scooter access, just walking in general. We've seen walking in general change a lot in our city in the last few years. And I think that this further encourages us to continue to make that push, continue to encourage our people to get out, get healthy, get active and use other forms of transport. The other thing I think we're going to see in the very near future, and absolutely we will see it, is delivery of some density in terms of inner city living. And so we will see our people be able to walk from their front door to their library and to their art space. So I think that that's an exciting change. So while we give up 13 car spaces, in effect, we're really offsetting them in other ways, inclusive of what's in the report, but I think some broader thinking applied there. Councillor Watson, did you have anything for close?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I would just probably like to mention the car parking in Lawrence Street going east. There's a lot of in the street parking there, which hasn't been utilised a great deal. So that'll be there for the overflow once our fantastic library opens. This will be an iconic building for our city and for our region. It will be a place to visit, making the Cube and that whole precinct one of the places to visit in 2021, I think it'll be when it opens. So if this gets up, all the very best for the future of our library. And with the temporary library in High Street, we've brought a whole lot of new people to the library industry.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Watson. Councillors, the motion is there, the very long motion is there before us. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Councillors, if you could move backwards through your agenda now. Again, we go back to item 8.4. The recommendation is on page 33 of 113. 8.4 is the tender for the construction of the new Wodonga Gallery Library. Now, it makes sense because you can't accept a tender when we hadn't accepted the permit. So, councillors, the recommendation is there on page 33. Do I have someone move that? Councillor Bennett, are you looking at me? Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'm having trouble taking you seriously with that hat on, though. Not you, Councillor Watson. It's Councillor Mitchell. You're happy to second that. Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, it's very exciting to have a new gallery and library to be constructed in our city. I would have just one question to Officer Schultz, that will we be having basically a project manager to oversee the whole thing like we have done in High Street with our large projects?
Council, the plan is to project manage the project internally. We do have a number of staff members who have indicated a clear favour of managing a project of that magnitude. So there are a number of staff who are suitably qualified and experienced to do that. So we will rather use the skills that we have internally and undertake the project.
Thanks, Officer Schultz. So I'm very happy to put this forward, and with what's occurred, we've got better and better at managing projects with High Street, and I can only see this going forward very well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The most important thing in my mind, reading through this recommendation, is that we're going to award it to a local contractor who will in turn employ other local contractors, and it's a great thing for the city, and I can only commend it. Thank you.
Okay, as a council, we don't get to see the details of each tender, so we have to rely on the experience of our delegated officers to decide on the best tenderer for this project. Council approved of an extra 1.4 million of ratepayers' money at the last month's council meeting, and this was including a 750 funding that was to be applied for and is yet to be approved of. So the total is $8,870 million spent of the ratepayers' money. So that is a large amount of money. So I do hope that there will be no blowouts on this project and there will be no major issues. But having said that, the tenderer does have a good construction history in our region. They are local, and so with this, I will support the officer's recommendation and look forward to the final outcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The library project from the start has been something that has been planned to be done and is necessary to continue to build the concept for the city centre that's been in place for a good number of years. And I think it's an absolutely wonderful project. Having said all those things, though, I'm somewhat concerned that we've already had considerable additions to the budget. I will be watching this carefully and expecting to see continuous progress reports as to how we're going to budget right through this project, because historically projects of this nature have a tendency to blow out, and I think we need to be absolutely vigilant from day one when this starts. We allocated a budget, and we've already agreed to, at a previous council meeting, to significantly exceed the allocation to the project than what was in the budget, and I think we need to be very careful to make sure we cut the cloth to fit the amount of money that we've got earmarked for the project. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can I ask a question? I'm not sure if this is going to be to Councillor Mildren or anyone who can answer it. Those historical budget blowouts, could you tell me about those ones? Someone?
Projects of this nature throughout a very long time, if you want to choose, and of this nature I talk about public projects. I'm not talking about just libraries, I'm talking about public projects that have this type of approach to it. If you look at what happened at the Adelaide Hospital, that's a good example. If you look at what happened at some of the other, we don't have very many projects like this that have been done with public money to compare to.
I just wanted to make some comments though. Yep. I won't repeat anything else that other people have said, but there's some great points on page 31 about the actual design of the building, talking about recycled red brick. So everyone will know the recycled red brick down at Junction. So bringing that design elements down here will really mean that space is much more consistent and draw people to and from. Reduced energy, LED lighting, solar panels, passive design, and there's a reduced building footprint. So we're going, instead of going out, we're actually going up. Our library is a bit of I think probably a non-traditional library in terms of all the different programs that we offer there. I'm in the library quite often, and when I was in there last week, the programming space now is so much smaller, and I know our community are really missing that. I know when there was a little bit of talk that we would not be doing story time for a short amount of time, there were a lot of people who were not impressed. And these people come from all walks of life. The library attracts people, no matter what you earn, you can use the library equally, which I think is so important to have those community assets that people can access for free no matter what they are earning. When I was in the library, it's a great actually having it in High Street, and it's a little bit closer to my work so I can get there in quicker time. But something that I've noticed about this library, one of the things is there were so many people coming in and asking where the toilets were. And of course, this current setup doesn't have any toilets. Like, you've got to actually go around and use the public ones. So I know there were some people saying, oh, actually, it's quite nice here. It is nice being on High Street, but there's still so many things now in that space that we're lacking that we will have so much more of in this new space. And computers is another huge one. So with this move over, luckily we haven't really had to downsize many of the books, but we've certainly had to cut back on computers. And I'd say that's a real resource that our community certainly like using with our library. I know there was a changeover period of about 5 days where we didn't have the library, and certainly at Gateway Health, we have a few computers available. And it was like Burke Street Mall there during that time. There were so many people coming in to access our computers because there are actually still a number of people in our community that don't have internet access at home, and that I know I was talking to some community last week, actually, some of the women who performed for us earlier who were doing their English studies at TAFE, and so they've got to walk 4 hours return. They live in Wodonga to get to TAFE, and then we've got to do their homework. If they don't have internet access at home, the library is such a great space for that.
Councillors, if you just allow me, I think a couple of things have been said that probably need a little bit of clarifying, or I'd like to make further comment on. But I'd like to start by saying this is an absolutely exciting project. It's going to be intergenerational, and you only get to build these things once every 30 or 40 years. Our library is the busiest regional library in Victoria. We have 186,000 visits. That's absolutely outstanding, and it's outstanding because it means that our community loves the space, but they also want to be there and they also want to use it. And in addition to that, then we have another 30 to 40,000 people going through our art space. So it's a much loved facility. So future-proofing it by building it the right size and making sure we absolutely have it right is important. I'd like to just talk about history of building projects in our city, and I actually think we've had significant buildings built in our city in the last few years. We've had the Pool, we've had the Cube, we've done High Street, we've done at Junction Place. We've done some pretty significant building works, and we have managed those projects exceptionally well. And I would much rather know up front that there was additional cost than be told halfway through a project when you almost have no option. So for me, the transparency in the way that the officers have gone about the process of providing us with the information around this building has actually been exceptional. And we had very clear and concise explanation as to why there was that variation from the original budget. And it was actually about timing, because it actually took us 3 years to secure the funding from the state government. 3 years. And in that time, of course, things shift. And, you know, when you actually go out for exact costs on numbers of bricks and staircases and all those other things that are going to be needed, of course you might see some shifts. The other comment around being involved in the tender process, I absolutely trust those who are involved in the tender process. We do use, often we use outside people as well as our own staff who are absolutely trained in this. Councillors, we are not trained in this, and there certainly is a very high set of skills that is required to be able to do that. So we are given a lot of information about what we should expect and what we actually have back from those people providing tenders to us for the provision of these services. I'd also like to acknowledge the state government for their contribution, for their $4 million contribution. We couldn't do it without the other investment from the other parts of government. And while we talk about good management of funds and good management of project, there was $150,000 allocated from the federal government as part of the residual funds through the National Stronger Regions Fund, which we went back to the department and actually asked for that money to be utilised there. The National Stronger Regions Fund, I'll remind you, the $10 million was actually all about revitalising our CBD. So to be able to use part of that, thank you to the federal government for allowing us to take the savings that we made through a project, a very extensive project that was well managed, and actually applied them somewhere else for the benefit of our community. So I'd just like to say thank you to the state government. It was Minister Pulford at the time, but through Jacqueline Symes, who is our current minister, would like to thank them for the $4 million towards this outstanding project. Councillors, back to Councillor Watson for any close.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I was very fortunate to be on council when we converted these theaterette at those times into an art space and actually put some yo-yo lights into the library and updated the library. And that was magical when you drove past there when it first opened. And I can see the same happening with this magical building to be built. But I also say with the demolishing of the current library, we're recycling and going to be using a lot of those products in that process too. So it's a win-win, I think, for our whole community. And I just can't wait to see it in a new council term when it opens.
Councillors, the motion is there before us on page 33. All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you for your comments, councillors. Item 8.5 is the Municipal Early Years Plan 2019 to 2020 and 2020 to 2021. The recommendation is there on page 38 to adopt that revised plan and also the child-friendly city policy to be revoked because it is overridden by this new plan. Councillors, the motion's there before you. Thank you, Councillor Mildren. A seconder. Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Mildren.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The early years services that we offer here are extraordinary and really well regarded broadly throughout this community. And it has been the case for a very long time. So I think it's a credit to the people that we've had over the journey that have worked in this field and the continuity that we've had with the staff and the processes that we've had in this field. It is one of the outstanding services that we offer as a council. And I think the work that gets done and the way these sorts of things and the plans get revised and repaired and updated and made to work in the modern environment indicates how successful we've been over the journey in creating a very successful service. So from that point of view, I have no hesitation in moving that we adopt this.
Young families are our biggest demographic, so it's fantastic to have this document in place. Everyone knows just how critical those first years of life are. So fantastic work. And in this, we've got some really interesting data around the strengths in our community, but also around some issues that we need to work on. So it's great that this is data informed.
Councillor Mildred, nothing to close? No. Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.6. See you, Jim. See you at Carol's by candlelight. I know. I thought I'd do a free ad for him. It's on Sunday, in case anybody doesn't know. 7:30. 8.6, Community Grants Policy and Community Impact Infrastructure Grant Program Guidelines. The recommendation is there on page 43. Do I have someone move that, please? Thanks, Councillor Bennett. Thanks, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Bennett.
This is just looking at our community impact grant program, and certainly we've been doing this for a few years now, and we've got some feedback in terms of what works and where we can improve it. So we're adding this infrastructure grant stream, because quite a lot of the things that we were getting probably would fit this criteria more. So being really clear with our community about the criteria and which one to apply for.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just reiterate what Councillor Bennett has said. Thank you.
I think it's probably important to highlight the fact that we're not adding another grant. We're just streamlining process, and we're still working within the same budget of the allocated funds there.
Good clarity. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Bennett, did you have anything to close? No. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.7, Sport and Recreation Victoria Funding Program 2021. Councillors, it's about the applications we made in conjunction with our contribution and our sporting club contributions. The recommendation is there on page 48. Do I have someone move that? Thanks, Councillor Watson. Thanks, Councillor Lowe. You're happy to second it, Councillor Lowe? Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Madam Mayor, I think the report, if people read through, it's very self-explanatory, and the purpose is that the recommendation for the project for the 20 and 21 Sport and Recreation Victoria funding programs. So I think we're not losing sight of their current assets in our city, and that we are looking, as well as at Barranduda Fields, we're looking at to improve and update our assets throughout our city, and it's really important that we don't lose sight of that, because if we leave them go too long, it gets too expensive.
Probably for the benefit of people at home, I'll just highlight a couple of the things on page 46, and that's building female-friendly facilities at Martin Park, the Les Cheesley Oval, part of their pavilion redevelopment there. There's some grants that were obtained and some council commitment there, and also another one is the Belvoir Park Regional Playground, and stage 2 of that redevelopment too. So that's an exciting project to look forward to as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question. Is there grant applications required to continue the hockey project that is at least partly funded at the moment? Is that...
They have their $300,000 that was a state, federal government election commitment, and they've got their own money to go towards the pavilion. They did make a request to council to put in an application to this funding round. However, because they'd already secured money from the federal government, their own money, and a council contribution, we looked at our next list of priorities, and they're the ones that we're recommending to council tonight. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So just that, so if they require additional money to the money that they've got, they're not going to get it this year, is that? Thank you. That's okay. The projects that we've got outlined here are all quite relevant and important projects in their right space and place. And I think if we can get at least some of these grants up through the state system, I think we'll have done well. I must say, I am a little concerned what might happen with the hockey if there's going to be a shortfall in what they've got at the moment. That does concern me a little. But otherwise, these projects are in their own right.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The money that they were requesting were for additional works over and above their pavilion. Yeah, so it was to do work on their main pavilion, so it was additional works.
Great to see another application with the Female Friendly Facilities Fund. Yesterday, we've just finished the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which is an international campaign. We were doing a lot of discussion with our community around council's role in this space, and certainly the Female Friendly Facilities Fund was something that we've talked about. So we know that women face different barriers when they're participating in physical activity. So having this as a priority is really fantastic for a council that I think is leading the space in terms of prevention.
Yeah, just a clarifying question for Deb, please. Just on the hockey one, can you just... So the hockey got a promise during the election campaign, and then council have also contributed to that. Can you remind me of that figure that they contributed to that? Or Ms. Clon?
It was $300,000 from council, and I think it was $500,000 from the feds. Yeah.
Councillors, thank you for all your comments and also some of that clarity that was sought. I think we also just need to be a little bit careful. These aren't completely locked away. We're actually going to be applying for these grants and crossing our fingers and putting our best foot forward, as we always do. And I think that, Councillor Watson, your comments around continued investment across all of our sporting precincts, despite the fact that we are going to kick off Barranduda Fields, is really important. So we're maintaining and ensuring the quality and the support for our current clubs, as well as allowing for future growth. But I think we need to just remember that we don't get ahead of ourselves. We're absolutely going to go as hard as we can to go for these grants, but they aren't locked away yet. Councillor Watson, did you have anything to close?
Madam Mayor, only to probably reiterate what you've just said, but you know, thanks to our hard-working staff that they do put really great applications forward. So I'll look forward to all their successes in the new year.
Councillors, the motion is there before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion's passed unanimously. Item 8.8, Outdoor Operations Depot, proposed negotiations into new lease or acquisition. Councillors, we've been down to the site and had many discussion in and around this. The recommendation is there on page 58. Do I have someone move that? Councillor Mitchell, Councillor... It's been clearly a long night. Councillor Watson. Councillor Mitchell, would you like to say anything?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say that this gives Council a great deal of flexibility in deciding the best options for our outdoor operations depot, and I fully commend the recommendation.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I've seen over my time in local government that it's moved around a little bit, the different depots. I think having the option and to may be able to exercise that later on is a good way to go, so it gives us time to think about that.
A future decision on where we head with this will be left up to the next council to decide. Council has left open the possibility to purchase the properties if council at the time decides this option. I think leaving this option open is the best way forward at this time and will give us and the future council the ability to see what is the most viable way forward when considering costs going forward in our budgets. This is another pretty big spend if it goes ahead and the future council decides to take the purchase option up. I'm not keen on borrowing new money for this, so I believe the money needed for the possible purchase of these properties would be, in my view, would have to come out of the budget and no new borrowings. Where this fits in, we'll know more when we come up to doing the next budget, the 2020-2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion provides the widest scope of options for council to ensure that they get, firstly, a depot that is brought up to a standard with the relevant improvements that are necessary for health and safety and a whole range of other amenity things, and just serviceability, services and things that are required to run a modern depot. It provides certainty in relation to the lease arrangements, both for the landlord and for the council into the future, and it provides an opportunity for council to determine, as Councillor Hall has said, the new council, to determine whether or not to actually purchase the property. Now, my understanding is that if a council chooses to purchase the property, there are potentially options available where it could be done in a manner that wouldn't necessitate large borrowings. And I think the strategy that sits behind this motion is extraordinarily good, and I think it's probably one of the better initiatives and strategies that we've put together in recent times for this type of thing. I think this is the way we should look at many things. It keeps the options open. It doesn't commit to things that we may or may not do later on. It doesn't commit a new council to something that perhaps, you know, because by the time this is all sorted through, if we were to make decisions here, it'd be in the last days of our term. I think this is a pretty good motion all round. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I'll be voting in favour of this recommendation tonight and echo my councillor's words as well. I think it does provide the greatest flexibility. Privately in business, there's debates whether you should own your own building or not, and it's generally because if your business doesn't go as well as what you like it to, it makes it very hard to put your own rent up if you're struggling. So you get two investments that struggle at the same time. I think in this situation, though, the council is always going to be here, and the return on the investment would be very quick. And as Councillor Meldrum said, you know, whether there would need to be borrowings or not is very debatable. It looks like if the next council chooses to go down the acquisition path, that they could make it through savings and other means. So I think it's a very good motion and very, very flexible for both parties too, the landlords as well. So to go down that path. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, councillors. What we're doing is actually our job, and that's about making sure we provide assets and future-proof what is required for our future communities. So yes, it's the right thinking, but it's actually our job. I'm a bit careful about preempting what a future council might do and how they might fund it and how that might happen, because times change and we don't know what is in the future. If you do, I'll borrow your looking glass because that would be interesting. But the thinking is absolutely spot on, and thank you to the staff for providing a good and substantial report. Councillor Mitchell, did you have anything for close? Councillors, the motion is before us. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried unanimously. Item 8.9 we've already done. So if there is no officers' report. Item 10.1 is the finance report for November 2019. It is for information only. Was there any questions or comments? Nope. Item 10.2 is the planning report for November. It's a whopper. 2019, that is for information only. Is there any questions or comments? Seems like we've been very busy trying to get everything through before Christmas. Well done, team. Item 10.3, Competitive Services Report for November 2019. Any questions or comments? If I could, councillors, I think there's a couple of worthy notes on there. Carrying out existing works and works at La Maison. I know that they've been a long time in the making, and just in time for all the Christmas parties, they're well underway down there. Also having a look at the going out for tender is the supply and install of Wi-Fi across parts of our CBD. Really important, particularly as we look at our smart cities concepts and also accommodate our young people, old and young, being able to log in right in the heart of town and being able to sit and use that amenity. So there's a couple of really interesting things in there, including provision of many more items for our community. Item 10.4 is Assemblies of Councillors, again for information only, if there's any comment. 10.5 is Decisions Register, again for information only, if there's any comment. 11 notices motion, there is none. 12 petitions, there are none. Council seal, none. General business, urgent business. Oh, wait, I skipped over that very quickly, didn't I? Sorry about that. General business, item 14. Councillor Bennett.
I'll make this very brief, just 2 points I wanted to highlight. We just had the Sustainable Living Festival, and part of that festival had the opening of the first 10-star home in Victoria, which is in Elmwood, so very impressive. Then a week later, Brendan Collins, who's the builder there, won the award by Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning called the Victorian Scorecard Award. So he was awarded that. Pretty cool to have something like that happening locally in Wodonga. And last week, also Council won the Vic Health Award for Alcohol Change project with our Who's It Gonna Hurt project. So that was a partnership that was Council, the task force working on that, and Dutch media. And it was a really innovative way to engage probably a hard to reach demographic. So, and I know those awards are really prestigious because I've applied and I've only ever come runner-up. So I know how hard those applications are. So to win first place is really impressive. Well done to all the team.
Keep it short this time. I just want to highlight the what Councillor Bennett then said too. Not only Brendan Collins and his team, but also Dutch media. I think it highlights the fact that talent can survive and thrive in small cities. So that's a national competition that the campaign won. So it just goes to show that you don't have to be from Melbourne or Sydney to be talented. Thank you.
I think, as they say, the regions do it better. Councillors, is there any other general business? No urgent business? No questions? We do actually have some confidential business, and it's urgent confidential business? Or just, yes, because it's urgent, it's been adopted late. Councillors and gallery, I'm going to have to actually ask you to leave, but please stay around for a cup of tea and a drink with us. We'd love to see you. We're going to close, deal with this matter, then we open and we close the meeting officially, but we'll be joining you for a cup of tea just there in our foyer if you would like to stay. So thank you for attending. If you don't make your way back in, Merry Christmas. I hope you and your family have a very safe, happy Christmas, and enjoy your time with your loved ones, because it is precious and it's not necessarily about the hair or the gifts. Funny enough. So, councillors, can I have someone please move the motion to dispense, close the meeting? Can I have someone move that? Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Yeah, you do. you. Have a safe and Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoy your break. It has been well earned this year. We on? Yeah. No, but I will do that. Oh, so I haven't officially closed the meeting. Councillors, can I have someone move to adopt the recommendation, the motion that was passed during that confidential session? Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Thank you, Councillor Hall. Anybody need to speak against it? All those in favour? Motion is carried unanimously. Close tonight's meeting. Thank you very much for a incredibly busy year, a very successful year for our city. To all of our citizens, I hope you have a safe and Merry Christmas. It has been a terrific year and our city has certainly never looked better. Please come back to us safely and we will actually see you in February for our next council meeting. Thank you, and thank you to councillors who certainly got in the Christmas spirit this year.